She perceived him merely as a transient cowboy, while he possessed half the state and had not experienced love in years. You appear to be in need of either a miracle or a technician. Ellie was startled, almost dropping her wrench as she peered through the dust. The hood of her truck was ajar, steam emanating from the engine like a specter. She turned towards the voice and beheld him, tall and dust-covered, seated astride away on a black horse that appeared to belong in a classic western. He donned a tattered hat pulled low over his eyes and a frayed denim shirt that corresponded with the terrain behind him. She rectified her posture, hands firmly grasping the wrench. "It depends on which option you are presenting," the cowboy said with a little smirk. "I left my miracle kit at the previous ghost town, but I possess proficiency with engines and horses if you have those available." Ellie hesitated. The sun was descending rapidly. Her phone was inoperative, and she was still 10 miles away from the ranch. Coyotes began to howl in the distance. The truck overheated, she murmured. "Alternatively, the alternator may be defective. I lack expertise. May I examine it?" he inquired, descending gradually. She nodded, observing him intently as he drew near. He advanced with subdued assurance. No haste, no arrogance, but deliberate strides that softly crunched on gravel. He placed his saddlebag down, took out a cloth, and bent over the engine as if he had performed the task numerous times before. Ellie folded her arms. "What is your name?" "Robert. Simply Robert." He glanced up momentarily. "That is my designation." She nodded briefly, uncertain if that response was adequate. He toiled in quiet for several minutes, cleaning grease from a hose and inspecting the fan belt. The sun descended beneath the hills, elongating shadows across the terrain. "Do you reside in this vicinity?" she inquired, just to alleviate the stillness. He declined in affirmation. "Merely transiting." "Are you from the state?" "Near enough to perceive its essence, yet distant enough to feel alienated." Ellie was uncertain of its meaning, yet the manner in which he articulated it compelled her to cease her inquiries. After 20 minutes, he cleaned his hands on his jeans and gazed at her. "She will require a tow. The radiators are malfunctioning," she observed with a sigh. "There is a ranch located around 10 miles to the west, belonging to me. A trailer and an additional truck are present there. If you assist me with hitching it, I will provide you with dinner." Robert inclined his hat slightly. Agreement. Another hour was required to attach the truck to his horse and carry her equipment into his saddlebag. She pursued him on foot for a time until he urged her to mount. She ascended behind him, clumsy yet appreciative, attempting to avoid leaning too closely, though the nocturnal air was rapidly chilly. Upon arriving at the boundary of her property, the antiquated wooden sign welcomed them. Silver Bend Ranch, 1979. The porch lights emanated a gentle warmth against the twilight. The horses in the pasture raised their heads, however did not proceed further. Robert guided them to the barn and assisted in unhitching everything silently. "Are you proficient with tools?" Ellie inquired when they unpacked the equipment. "It is contingent upon the position. I have a damaged gate and a leaking roof." He peered at her whether she was seeking employment. "In just a few days, I will proceed to the next phase." She acquiesced. Only a few days. Later that evening, Ellie placed a serving of stew and cornbread on the table in the compact kitchen. Robert sat opposite her, recently showered, yet still clad in his tattered garments. He consumed his meal with gratitude rather than desperation, never requesting more than what she provided. She observed him from behind her glass. "Have you ever established a permanent residence?" He shook his head. "Not for an extended period. Fleeing from something. Pursuing tranquilly," he replied succinctly. The response surprised her. The wind outside intensified, caressing the glass panes gently. The night enveloped them in silence. Subsequently, their conversation diminished significantly. She extended to him the available room in the antiquated bunkhouse adjacent to the barn. He acquiesced, expressed his gratitude, and exited into the moonlight. Ellie secured the door after him, her brow knitted in concern. He possessed an enigmatic quality, serene yet aloof, benevolent yet reserved. A wandering cowboy, she mused. One of the traditional variety. She declined, filled another glass with water, and extinguished the lights. However, shortly before daybreak, a crash disrupted the tranquility. Ellie sprang upright, her heart racing. The horses were neighing loudly outside. She seized the gun near the door, donned her boots, and sprinted towards the barn. She had scarcely progressed halfway before she observed them. 3 individuals swiftly maneuvering in the darkness, one having already entered the barn. One of the doors had detached from its hinges. Subsequently, there was the sound of fists striking, accompanied by grunting and a body colliding with the wall. She elevated the gun, quaking, but then perceived motion at the periphery. Robert. He moved with remarkable speed, seizing one of the invaders by the collar and forcefully pushing him against the post. The man fell. Another assailant lunged at him, but Robert evaded, delivered a punch to his ribs, and then executed a sweeping maneuver that was too fluid to be attributed to a cowboy and too precise to be mere drunken luck. The third individual glanced at Robert and fled. Upon Ellie's arrival at the scene, Robert was securing the stall locks and soothing the horses. "Are you all right?" she inquired breathlessly. "A more pertinent inquiry for them," he responded, gesturing towards the 2 men moaning on the ground. She gazed at him, astonished. "Who are you?" He locked eyes with her. "Only Robert." However, Ellie harbored doubts about that assertion now. Robert labored with his sleeves rolled up and his speech minimal. By mid-morning the next day, he had restored the damaged barn door, reinforced 2 stalls, and secured the loose hinges on the feed shed. Ellie saw him from afar, gnawing on the tip of a pencil while seated on the porch steps, her paperwork neglected in her lap. She had witnessed adult men succumb to the burden of an obstinate horse or express frustration during a straightforward gate repair. However, Robert moved with a subdued cadence, as if he had nothing to demonstrate. His hands were firm, precise, and calloused, yet not negligent. He proceeded without haste. He refrained from boasting. He has just repaired it, and it disturbed her more than the intrusion the previous night. Ellie waited until the final nail was driven in before advancing. He wiped his forehead and turned towards her as if he were already aware of her presence. "Thank you," she remarked, "for last night." He acknowledged with a nod. "Do you encounter significant issues in this area?" Such land often attracts attention, particularly from individuals seeking to acquire what they have not rightfully earned. Robert remained silent. He approached the trough and splashed water across his face. "Have you ever learned how to throw someone like that in a pub fight?" she inquired, crossing her arms. Robert gazed upward, water cascading down his jawline. "Not precisely. You exhibit the movements of someone who is trained," he remarked. "Nothing." She advanced closer. "It is exceedingly difficult to place trust in an individual who divulges nothing about themselves." He wiped his face with a cloth and regarded her steadily. "Do you trust me sufficiently to permit my stay?" That was prior to your commencement of rib fractures in the darkness akin to a former special operations operative. He nearly smiled. "Nearly. I informed you to refer to him solely as Robert. Furthermore, I indicated that such behavior is unacceptable here. You're either evading something, concealing something, or both. So which is it?" Robert gazed across the pasture, where the horses grazed serenely, the wind rustling the tall grass. He did not respond immediately. Occasionally, individuals misplace things, he remarked quietly, and they prefer not to discuss them. Ellie's jaw tightened. However, a subtle inflection in his voice prompted her to reconsider. She acknowledged him with a single nod. "You have merited a few further nights. That is my sole assertion." He responded with a little nod. "That suffices for me." In the ensuing days, Robert established a routine on the ranch. He rose before dawn, assisted with feeding, repaired a section of the fence that had been drooping for months, and successfully soothed Ellie's most challenging mare, Dusty, using merely a soft whistle and steady hands. Meanwhile, Ellie endeavored to decipher him, posing inquiries about his upbringing, his motivations for moving west, and whether he had ever trained horses professionally. Every response was ambiguous and meticulously phrased, as though he were constructing a barrier while walking alongside her. One evening, following a lengthy workday, they sat on the porch, observing the sky transition from amber to deep blue. Ellie initiated the conversation. My father used to say, land is only as valuable as the man willing to cultivate it. Robert nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Do you truly believe that? She inquired. I contend that land retains the memory of the hands that construct it and the feet that flee from it. She inclined her head. Which one are you? He gazed at her intently, eyes obscured yet sincere. I already constructed. Subsequently, I fled, determining the ultimate victor still ongoing. For a brief interval, neither party uttered a word. Ellie inquired, do you favor horses due to your affection for them, or because they are more attentive than humans? Robert chuckled softly, a modest combination of both. Ellie exhibited a smile. Have you ever contemplated remaining in a single location? His gaze remained fixed on the terrain. Occasionally, you contemplate remaining here. He turned to her more slowly this time. Would it be significant if I did? She blinked, and her chest constricted. I do not permit others to enter my life readily, she stated softly. I also do not. Their gazes collided. An unarticulated understanding transpired between them. Recognition, perhaps even comprehension. No declarations, no guarantees. Merely two individuals who had acquired survival skills through adversity, contemplating whether this occasion may be distinct. Subsequently, the distant sound of a truck reverberated along the dirt road. Ellie rose, tension reasserting itself in her shoulders. That is Ray. Robert observed the transformation of her expression. Issue? She nodded somberly. Large one. Suddenly, the tranquility they had established was on the verge of being challenged. The truck arrived, enveloped in a cloud of dust, its engine emitting a deep growl like to a warning. Ellie remained motionless on the porch, her arms firmly crossed over her chest, her mouth clenched in a manner Robert had not previously observed. Ray exited the driver's seat with an air of ownership over the terrain under him, consistent as ever. He was tall, bronzed, and donned a tailored button-down shirt that was ill-suited for any environment involving dirt. His smile was broad, rehearsed, refined. Robert immediately disliked him. Ellie, Ray stated, approaching the porch as though he had received an invitation. It has been a considerable duration since our last encounter. I heard your truck malfunctioned. I intended to visit and offer assistance. Ellie's tone was monotonous, excessively tardy. Assistance has already been provided. Ray's gaze shifted to Robert, who leaned against the porch post with nonchalant indifference yet possessed keen eyes. Robert remained stationary, remained unblinking. He was not required to. Ray's smile faltered. Is this an acquaintance of yours? Robert failed to answer. Ellie entered. He is assisting at the ranch. That is all the information you require. Ray laughed softly as he turned back to her. Indeed, I assumed that following the recent events, you would be prepared to discuss business matters. The proposal remains valid. It never existed, Ray. Ellie became upset. You continue to feign its occurrence. He inclined his head, feigning injury. Let us proceed. It is evident that sustaining this establishment indefinitely is unfeasible. You are on the brink of foreclosure, and I possess the resources to remedy that situation. I'm not engaging in sales. He approached, modulating his voice to a lower volume. Are you certain of that? Next time, I may not seek assistance. Robert then straightened. Are you intimidating her? Ray pivoted. Excuse me. Robert descended the steps deliberately, composed, and measured. You arrived without an invitation. You are exerting pressure. I would characterize that as a threat. Ray retreated slightly, regaining his balance. You are unaware of the identity of the individual with whom you're conversing. Robert's smile lacked authenticity. No, however, I am familiar with the category. Ray squinted. This is not your concern, Cowboy. Robert's voice diminished. It is currently. Ellie interposed herself between them. Cease immediately, both of you. Ray inhaled once more, attempting to regain his composure. You will come to regret this, Sel. You consistently do. He pivoted, returned to his truck, and accelerated down the gravel road, scattering dirt behind him. Robert observed till the dust had settled. Are you well? He inquired softly. Ellie acquiesced, However, her hands remained tightly clenched. "He will not cease." Robert gazed over the terrain, his jaw clenched. "Consequently, I shall not either." That night, Ellie seldom slept. She inspected the locks twice, traversed the perimeter with a torch, and flinched at every sound carried by the wind. Robert sat in the barn, meticulously sharpening a blade with deliberate, measured strokes, his gaze locked on the door. The occurrence transpired shortly after midnight. A metallic clang. The equines became agitated. Ellie was already sprinting when Robert emerged from the side stall, advancing with alarming accuracy. Two males clad in black hoodies were in the process of unchaining the cubicle doors when he subdued the first individual, forcefully bringing him to the ground. The second man brandished a crowbar and struck. Robert evaded, retaliated, seized the man's wrist, and contorted it till the weapon fell. With a single punch, followed by another, the man was rendered unconscious. Ellie appeared, breathless, with a rifle. "Are you well?" she inquired. Robert nodded, inhaling deeply yet steadily. They were not professionals, merely mercenaries. "Ray," she exclaimed with disdain. Robert knelt beside one of the men, searched his pockets, and retrieved a folded note. It bore no name, only a rudimentary map of her property with a stall marked by a red X. Ellie felt a chill run through her. "They intended to abduct the mayor," she murmured. "Exploit her, tarnish the ranch's reputation." Robert rose, his eyes narrowing. "He is not merely attempting to intimidate you. He is attempting to dismantle you incrementally." Ellie sensed a change within her. "I cannot manage this alone," she stated. "You are not," Robert responded. The following morning, Ellie discovered him reinforcing the perimeter fence with new barbed wire. She presented him with coffee, remaining silent for a moment before remarking, "You did not even hesitate last night." Robert regarded her, his hands still soiled. There was no necessity for words. Her prior experience sufficed. His silence conveyed sufficient response. "Why do you conceal it?" she inquired. "Because the last time I advocated for something," he replied deliberately, "I lost more than I acquired." She swallowed hard. "And this time?" he asked, his gaze softening. "I'm still discerning that." She set the mug on the fence post adjacent to him. "For what it is worth, I am pleased you were present." He nodded. "So am I." However, in the recesses of her mind, Ellie recognized that Ray was not yet finished, and Robert increasingly resembled an individual equipped to endure far greater challenges than a cowboy. It commenced with a box, an antiquated, dusty one, concealed in the rear of the loft amidst a jumble of ropes and damaged tack. Ellie had not intended to discover it. She was rummaging for additional blankets and almost stumbled upon it. The box was weighty, featuring metal corners and a corroded latch. Upon opening it, a plume of age-barn dust invaded her lungs. Within lay numerous papers, meticulously folded documents with yellowed edges, secured by a leather strap, and atop them, an envelope inscribed with the name J.D. Harrison, inscribed in refined, meticulous script. She halted. J.D. Harrison. It was a name infrequently encountered, yet it resonated in her memory. It was well known. Years prior, it dominated the headlines. Robert D. Harrison, the reticent partner in the most substantial land and oil acquisitions in the area, the individual who had discreetly accumulated an empire by the age of 35 and subsequently vanished. He reportedly disappeared following the death of his fiancée in a private plane crash en route to a charity gala. Speculation abounded. Grief, scandal, guilt, and betrayal. Some asserted he had lost everything in a covert buyout, while others suggested he had orchestrated his own demise. Ellie gazed at the envelope before extracting the documents within. Documents such as titles, deeds, trust papers, and legal correspondence predominantly included his signature, Robert's. However, it was not merely Robert. Her heart quickened. She descended the ladder, her hands trembling, and proceeded directly to the house. She required verification. She activated her antiquated laptop, searched the name online, and found him. A younger iteration, clean-shaven, more defined in features, attired in suits exceeding the value of her truck. Yet, The eyes remained unchanged. It was he, Robert. Robert D. Harrison, the individual who had possessed half the state, the man residing in her bunkhouse, the man who had not experienced love in years. She encountered him in the pasture later that evening, inspecting the fence line with one of the younger colts following him like a shadow. He glanced upward as she neared, interpreting her expression prior to her utterance. "You discovered it," he remarked softly. Ellie remained silent. She merely stood there, documents in hand, treachery evident in her tone. "You deceived me." Robert breathed out slowly. "I did not deceive. I merely withheld information. You allowed me to perceive you as a nomadic cowboy, a drifter with a subdued history and minor regrets. You permitted me to place my trust in you. I never requested you to," he stated, not unkindly. "But you were aware that I did." He nodded. "Yes." Ellie paced, her voice trembling. "You are Robert Harrison, the individual who vanished after his empire collapsed." "It did not collapse," he countered. "I departed from it." She faced him, her gaze piercing. "Why?" He hesitated. "I constructed something I believed would transform the world. When it was shattered, I was left with nothing but silence." She remained silent. The wind gently rustled the dry grass. Robert approached. "I never intended to mislead you. I merely wished to assume a different identity temporarily, in a place where individuals did not perceive wealth, legacy, or failure." She expressed with bitterness that they observed a man wielding a hammer alongside a horse. "And you permitted them," she continued. "I allowed you," Ellie remarked, her hands quivering as she gazed downward at the papers. "You claim to be pursuing peace. Yet, you continue to flee, Robert, even in this moment." "I understand," he replied. "And I apologize," she said, lifting her gaze, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm indifferent to your past identity, but I valued the person I believed you to be." "I remain that person," he murmured. She shook her head. "I no longer recognize you." With that, she turned and departed, leaving him in the diminishing light, holding nothing but grief. Behind him, the colt emitted a gentle whinny. Robert remained motionless as he comprehended, for the first time in years, the significance of being acknowledged and the price of concealment. Ellie departed prior to dawn. She failed to leave a note. She refrained from looking back. The box of paperwork remained undisturbed on the kitchen table, a quiet testament to her previous certainties and her current doubts. She packed merely a duffel bag and drove her secondary truck into town, requiring room, air, and an absence of Robert Harrison. She despised that moniker as it encapsulated the entirety of her emotions, indicating that every semblance of trust and connection was founded on a falsehood. The individual who repaired her fences and quietly rode her nervous mares was not merely Robert. He was a concealed millionaire, a man with greater authority than he disclosed, a man who saw the world from the shadows, allowing her to think he had none. On the outskirts of town, she reserved a room at a modest roadside inn and endeavored to avoid contemplation. Yet the solitude was more oppressive there than it had been in the pasture. Later that day, she traversed past the hardware store on Main Street and halted upon hearing her name murmured behind her. "Ellie, have you seen the news?" She pivoted to encounter an elderly rancher whom she dimly recognized. Possibly Thompson. He raised a wrinkled local newspaper. 2 further households coerced into selling. Ray Easton broadens its development scope. She seized it from his grasp. The headline was subpar. The article was inferior. Ray Easton, her former partner, was acquiring land at an alarming rate. Every family that got one of his invites either departed town discreetly or became embroiled in unaffordable court disputes. He was no longer only menacing. He was performing. The final line caused her stomach to churn. Implementing without opposition. Easton Development anticipates commencing construction within 3 months on the southern periphery of Silver Bend, her property, her residence. The puzzle parts interlocked seamlessly. The coercion, the intimidation, the intrusion, the deliberate assaults. Ray was not only pursuing her. He was suffocating the valley with each action, and she had departed from the sole individual capable of halting him. That night, The wind howled fiercely outside her motel window. Ellie occupied the little desk, gazing at the folded newspaper beside to her unconsumed meal. Every recollection of Robert whirled in her mind. His subdued fortitude, the habitual rising at dawn, the scars adorning his knuckles, the melancholy reflected in his gaze. He did not deceive her to cause her pain. He concealed himself to safeguard the remnants of his identity. She fled, not because through his falsehoods, but because deep within, he had transformed into someone she could perhaps love. That instilled fear in her. However, love was no longer the focus. Ray was prevailing, and Ellie required someone who not only cared but could also combat. At daybreak, she returned by car. The ranch was tranquil. The entrance gate remained ajar. The air was permeated with the sense of dust and horses, accompanied by an underlying essence reminiscent of return. She discovered him in the barn. Robert was grooming one of the colts, sleeves pulled up, his motions deliberate, as if their bond remained unbroken. Initially, she remained silent, merely observing. He turned, and upon their eyes meeting, there was neither wrath nor demand, only anticipation. She stated that she read the news. He acquiesced. He is progressing more rapidly than anticipated. I'm aware. She advanced nearer. I departed. I'm aware of that as well. A prolonged silence ensued, constricting her throat. I did not return seeking an apology or an explanation. Robert scrutinized her attentively. Then why did you? Because I require you, she replied. Not merely the individual with a wrench and a gentle demeanor. I require Robert Harrison, the individual who constructed half of the state. The individual capable of preventing Ray from incinerating everything. His gaze became gentler. Are you certain? She expressed uncertainty about everything, except that you persisted in your struggle. Despite the absence of witnesses, he advanced. I have consistently desired to safeguard both this location and you. Ellie suppressed her tears. What are next steps? She inquired. Robert retrieved a folder off the bench. A legal document highlighted in bold. Easton Holdings, LLC. We will formulate a strategy, he stated. Subsequently, we amplify it. They exited together into the dawn light. Ray have power, yet they had a defined goal. Perhaps that was sufficient to achieve victory. 3 days later, the town's historic meeting hall was filled to capacity. Robert stood at the forefront, sleeves pulled up, devoid of a tie, his voice subdued yet articulate. An expansive easel position behind him exhibited maps, deeds, and a network of associations, including the names of shell corporations, real estate transactions, and financial traces that ultimately pointed to a singular individual. Ray Easton. Ellie positioned herself adjacent to him, surveying the assembly. Agriculturalists, educators, livestock producers, some irate, some apprehensive, all fatigued from silence. I understand that I have not provided you with a basis for trust, Robert stated. However, you are all aware that Ray's proposition is not a business opportunity. It is coercion. You have observed it and experienced it. I have witnessed the consequences of allowing men like him to act without restraint, and I refuse to be a passive observer any longer. He brandished a package of paperwork. These are legal documents for an injunction. I will assume the expenses. You simply need to align with us. The room fell silent. An elderly woman then raised her hand. Is that truly you, Harrison? Robert affirmed, Yes, ma'am. Then why assist us now? He hesitated. Because I failed to do so previously, and I ought to have. A murmur circulated across the room. Individuals acquiesced and subsequently rose. By the conclusion of the hour, 25 signatures adorned the document, sufficient to impede Ray's initiative, yet they were all aware he would not acquiesce passively. That evening, Robert traversed the barn, phone affixed to his ear. Indeed, we have filed. The injunction will be executed first thing in the morning, he stated. This implies Ray has no alternatives unless he resorts to coercion. He terminated the call. Ellie positioned herself in the doorway. Do you believe he will arrive? Robert affirmed with a nod. He must. At midnight, the roar of engines disrupted the stillness. Ellie's stomach sank. They have arrived. Robert passed her a torch and a walkie-talkie. Exit through the rear. Contact Sheriff Lang. Inform him of the situation. I refuse to abandon you. He stated, I am not inquiring. However, she remained stationary. Robert released a breath. Remain nearby. They stealthily exited into the darkness. Illumination from headlights emerged on the opposite side of the grass. A minimum of 3 trucks. Figures emerged abruptly, illuminating beams traversing the terrain. Ray's voice resonated with a frigid arrogance. Robert, please emerge. We both understand that this country holds no significance without bloodshed upon it. Robert emerged, shotgun lowered yet poised for action. You have made your move. Now withdraw, Ree growled. Do you believe that paperwork will hinder me? No, Robert replied. However, witnesses will. Sirens reverberated in the distance. Ree said a curse. You contacted the police. Robert's grip intensified. No, Ellie did. Ree turned as she emerged behind him, weapon leveled. Retreat, Ree. He surged forward. A gunshot reverberated through the night. Ray knelt, grasping his side, while his soldiers dispersed into the darkness. Ellie sprinted towards Robert, her heart thumping. Are you all right? He nodded, despite a wound bleeding from his temple. Sufficiently proximate. The sheriff's vehicles sped down the road moments later, blue and red lights penetrating the dust. Ree was apprehended immediately. Unregistered firearms, attempted assault, trespassing. The deputies required little persuasion. As the sun ascended over Silver Bend, the legal battle had only commenced. However, the most severe phase of the conflict had concluded, and they had triumphed in the initial engagement collectively. Robert had less agility throughout the subsequent week. The laceration above his temple was sutured, the contused ribs were bound, yet Ellie recognized that agony often permeated beyond mere muscle. She observed it in his prolonged stance at the fence line, gazing at the wind's influence on the grass, and in the subtle sigh he released when he believed she was unaware. He never voiced any grievances, and she remained steadfastly by his side. They resumed their synchronized tasks as if no rift had occurred, feeding the horses, traversing the meadow, and cultivating the modest garden behind the barn. However, their quiet now possessed a kinder quality, an unspoken understanding. One evening, as the sun descended behind the hills and adorned the sky with soft hues of peach and rose, Ellie discovered him seated by the corral, methodically cleaning away the dust with deliberate strokes. You will indulge her, she remarked with a gentle smile. She merits it, Robert responded, caressing the mare's neck. We all deserve such indulgence occasionally, Ellie added as she sat next to him, clasping her hands in her lap. Have you ever contemplated what follows? She inquired. Robert did not respond immediately. Daily, he gazed at her with unwavering eyes. I once believed I was destined to construct tangible entities, deals, projects, empires. However, recently, he paused, his gaze wandering toward the hills. I yearned to create something enduring, something serene, something authentic. Ellie swallowed with difficulty. Have you? Robert retrieved a small, weathered box from his pocket. It was neither velvet nor new, merely uncomplicated, akin to all aspects of him. He unveiled a silver ring, intricate and handcrafted, featuring a solitary subtle engraving on the interior. She instantly recognized the script. It was her mother's handwriting. Somehow, he had extracted a line from an old birthday card that she had previously placed on the kitchen table and had it inscribed. Return home when you are prepared. Ellie's breath hitched. Robert did not bow. He did not deliver a speech. He merely gazed at her, his eyes brimming with a profound, unadulterated sincerity. I have not loved in years, he stated gently, and I did not believe I would ever love again. Not in this manner. Not where it was significant. Ellie suppressed her emotions. I require neither a church nor a congregation, he stated. I require only you and the sound of your boots on the porch each morning. She laughed through her tears, then nodded, her voice quavering. Yes. Robert placed the ring on her finger. It fit as if it had always awaited her. They remained there a while longer as night descended, the stars appearing one by one. Without ostentation or spectacle, two individuals silently and wholly selected one another. Following the tumult, the conflict, and the protracted journey of sorrow and cautious hearts, they had returned home, and this time, their commitment would endure. A year later, the hills of Silver Bend exhibited a verdancy not seen in decades. A gentle spring rain had descended, encouraging wildflowers to emerge from the compacted soil. Equines traversed the pasture, their manes billowing in the zephyr. Laughter emanated from the barn, accompanied by the vivacious voices of children. The ranch had transcended its role as mere domicile. It had become a sanctuary. Ellie positioned herself on the porch, cradling a slumbering infant against her chest in a woven wrap. Her daughter, Ren, possessed her father's resolute brow and her mother's subdued obstinacy. The infant stirred subtly while Ellie observed a group of adolescents preparing horses under the supervision of two volunteers. Across the field, Robert accompanied a 10-year-old boy, grasping the reins of a docile mare. He moved deliberately, not due to age, but with intention, as if each step held significance. The boy chuckled at something Robert remarked, and Robert tousled his hair affectionately. This was their creation. Following the tumult of Ray's demise and the ensuing legal disputes, the community united. Individuals Ellie never envisioned sharing a space now collaborated. The ranch transformed into a nonprofit center providing equine therapy for veterans, at-risk youth, and families enduring significant loss. Robert refrained from affixing his name to any endeavor, seeking no recognition. His sole intention was to contribute. Ellie descended the porch steps, mindful of Ren's head cradled in her hand. From across the corral, Robert observed her and smiled. A subtle, effortless smile that disarmed her each time. "Good morning, Mrs. Harrison," he called. "You are tardy for breakfast, Mr." Harrison met her halfway, bestowing a gentle kiss on her forehead before glancing at the slumbering infant. "She is sound asleep, much like her father post-fence duty," Robert remarked with a chuckle. Fair enough. They continued walking, the golden light enveloping the earth. A sign creaked softly at the ranch entrance, newly sanded and meticulously repainted. The sign was affixed to the original post erected by her father decades prior, with a new name intricately carved into the wood. Harrison Ridge, where we come back to life. Robert gazed at it and exhaled slowly. "Do you think your father would have appreciated it?" Ellie nodded. "He would have liked you." Robert's expression softened. "It took me long enough to earn that." She extended her hand towards him. "You merited it the instant you remained." They lingered for a time, observing the wind traverse the hills. Their daughter nestled warmly between them, the ranch vibrant with sound and vitality. They had endured significant losses, yet they had constructed even more, not through steel, oil, or power, but through love, truth, and the steadfast choice to continually select one another daily, irrespective of the world's fluctuations. As dawn broke over Harrison Ridge, Ellie gazed at Robert and smiled. "Let us ride," she murmured. He acquiesced. Together, with Ren securely nestled against her mother's chest, they saddled two horses and ascended the ridge trail at a leisurely pace towards the hilltop where Robert had previously observed the land in solitude, contemplating his sense of belonging. At the summit, he gazed down not as a wanderer or a specter of his former self, but as a husband, a father, a man resurrected precisely in his destined place. Often, the most profound love narratives emerge not from extravagant displays or ideal origins, but from fragmented elements, meticulously reconstructed with deliberate hands and serene hearts. Robert and Ellie discovered not only one another, but also healing, purpose, and an irreplaceable home that can only be constructed through shared experiences. Genuine love transcends past identities. It centers on the mutual choices made in the journey of becoming. If this narrative resonated with you, evoking the notion that even the most solitary heart can rediscover love, please contemplate subscribing to Soul Stirring Stories. At Soul Stirring Stories, we present poignant narratives that underscore a fundamental truth. It is never too late to start anew. Subscribe, activate the notification bell, and become part of our expanding community of storytelling enthusiasts who embrace second chances and profound love. We appreciate your viewership, and remember, no matter your location, someone is eager to accompany you home. Soul Stirring Stories.